Hey everyone, it has been probably about 2.5 months since I posted my video where I proclaimed that 2021 was going to be the year of the router for me. And I'll link to that video above. But I wanted to put out a formal review video on the Bosch 1617EVSPK. This is a great kit that has a 2.25 horsepower motor. And in this video, I'll be going through the accessories that come with this kit. I'll be going through the motor, the fixed base, and the plunge base, and highlighting a few things with that, as well as some of the accessories that I think really make this a much better system. If you are looking for a smaller router, I've already posted a review of the DeWalt 20-volt cordless router, which I absolutely love. It's essentially a palm router, a little bulkier with a battery, but a great system and a really great starter router for those that are looking to get into routing for the first time and are part of the DeWalt cordless platform. So this video though is going to be focused on the Bosch, and yeah, let's take a look. In front of us right now, we have all the items that come with the Bosch 1617 EVSPK kit. So this includes the fixed base, the motor, the plunge base, as well as the accessory kit for that. And it also does come with a really nice hard shell case that has more than enough room for all the accessories that you see here, as well as some of the optional accessories that can easily be stored in this case. I choose to generally just throw them in the drawer, but there is space in this to hold some of the other optional accessories. So first of all, the motor itself is 2.25 horsepower. It is a 12 amp motor, and it is adjustable speed, so it goes from 8,000 to 25,000 RPMs. And for me, I generally keep it towards the higher end if I'm using straight bits, which is generally my use case for it. If I am moving to a wider bit, I'll start to slow it down because the outer part of the bit will be going much faster than the inside part. So if you were using a bit that's maybe 3.5 inches wide, which is a very big bit, then it'd be going much faster on the outside, so you want to slow it down. I also do slow it down if I'm working with cherry specifically, sometimes hard maple as well, to avoid burn. So the speed adjustment is helpful and it's easy to do on the fly. So now let's just kind of go over all the accessories, then I'll get to the plunge base, or the fixed base and the plunge base. So we do have the included wrenches, one for the spindle, and then the other one goes on the collet to easily tighten up your bit. It's not a bad system. The wrenches are very good quality. It's not quite as simple as what Festool has done on their routers, which is very unique and something that definitely leads the industry. It does come with a 1/2 inch collet as well as a 1/4 inch collet. So I have the 1/2 inch in here right now. And I generally try to use 1/2 inch bits anytime I can. If I need to move to 1/4 inch, I can do that here. I really only do that with this router when I'm working with the dovetail jig. Otherwise, if I'm using a 1/4 inch bit, I'm usually using my DeWalt cordless router. It also does come with this hex wrench, which allows you to, if you have this mounted in a router table, which I do often, it allows you to easily fine adjust from the top of the router table. So essentially turning this into kind of a poor man's router lift, but it does give you a nice level of adjustment. And yeah, so nice that they included that and that it's part of both the base as well as the mounting mechanism to the router table. So very happy with that. It does come with these chip shields, which can, I believe, easily clip in. Yeah, so they can, let's see. There we go. So easily clip in like that. So it is clear so you can see through it. I don't use these for a couple of reasons. One is that, well, primary reason is dust collection. So it forces all the sawdust to go in here. So even though when I am working with the dovetail jig, it's shooting sawdust out at me, I'd rather have it come out rather than impact the quality of the cut. And also I do typically use this router dust hood for dust collection, which negates the need for this. And there is another one here for the plunge base as well. That just easily fits in right there. So if you want to use those, go for it. If you're doing a small cut, like just a really small bit of routing, I would probably put these on because then you're not worried too much about that sawdust and chip buildup. But otherwise, they're nice to have, but by no means needed. It also does come with a bit of a screw pack for attaching this base to the router table, which the router table also comes with a lot of screws and it's Bosch as well. So I basically just have a drawer full of router type screws. So also your instruction manual, and I do just want to note on here that there is the 1617 EVS, and then 1617 EVSPK, which this kit is, as well as the 1618 EVS. So the differences with these, and let's see if I get this right. So the 1617 is an older router that I think was actually a different motor. So I think it was a 2 horsepower motor, and it's one that I don't know if it's been completely discontinued, but you won't really find the 1617. The 1617 EVS is this same 2.25 horsepower motor with just the fixed base. So really just this piece, and then a couple of the included accessories, but it does not include the plunge base. The EVS PK, so I think that's probably EVS and then plunge kit. So it comes with the plunge base and everything that you see here. That's what I'm talking about. Then the 1618 has the D handle here. And I think it's just a slightly different motor because of the electrical mount into the D handle. So that's the difference between these. But for all intents and purposes, today we're talking about the 16 EVS PK. It's a little bit to get around, but yeah, it's a great kit and one that I'd highly recommend. So let's move these accessories to the side and take a look at the motor itself. So it's a big motor. So I don't have a lot of experience with other 2.25 horsepower, 1 3/4, 2 horsepower. So I don't have a lot of experience with them, but I am generally very impressed with both the build quality of this. The cord itself is very high quality and it's quite long, which is great. Just to keep it off your feet and keep everything tidy. And it does mount very easily to both of these bases. So just to show you on here, has this little triangle and then this slot that then allows you to quickly put it in. Then it has some quick adjusts to these depths. And in the base itself, it's got the locking mechanism in there. And you really just you open this up, slide it in. Then when you want it out, you put that in and then it will come out. So very easy to put in there, and it's the exact same mechanism on the plunge base as well. So let's put this in. So again, what we're gonna do, and I generally have the cable coming out the back, although it does have the slots on both sides. So if for some reason you wanted this to come out the front because you prefer to have the switch at the back, just because of how you work with routers, you can totally do that. But for me, I'll align that triangle there, turn it down, and I can just lock it into place. And it's very easy to do the fine adjust. So you just unlock it, then you can just easily screw this or turn this and it will slightly adjust. Of course, you do want to put your bit in before doing any of that fine adjustment, and putting the bit in is very easy. You can do it with the base on there, so the wrenches do fit in there and you can definitely put that in. I generally just take the motor out, put my bit in, slide it in, and I'm all set. So that's how that goes in there. And again, if you wanted to quickly push it down, you can just push that in, and then you can drop the router a much more significant amount, then lock it into place. So very easy to use mechanism, and then very easy to dial it in. And again, if this is mounted on the bottom of the router table, you can take the included hex wrench, and from the top of the router table, so again, thinking that that's the router table, you can do your fine adjust. So you unlock it, then you just easily do your fine adjust, which is very nice. And I would say that the base plate on both the fixed base And the plunge base, which is the same type of plastic, is really nice. It glides along really well. I haven't had to lubricate these for anything. And you'll just see how clean and yeah, there are a little bit of scratches on here, but nothing that would impact the performance. But the router itself, and I always do a good job trying to clean it up with the vacuum and just generally wipe it down after every use. But it holds up really well. It's probably seen, I'd guess, between 15 and 20 hours of runtime. Maybe that's a little high, maybe 12 to 15 hours of runtime. But anyways, it's been holding up really well. It does have these hardwood handles, which, I mean, they're fine. Like they're actually very comfortable, so don't think that you'll get splinters. It's a really nice finish on there. And yeah, so pretty happy with the fixed base. It's generally what I have on here, especially when I'm doing dovetails or routing dados and that sort of thing. Anything where I don't need to plunge, really. So let's take a look now. Let's take this motor out and take a look at the plunge base. So the plunge base is definitely a lot bigger, and the mechanisms on it, well, the mounting mechanism is essentially the same with a latch to put the motor in. It does have a little key there, so a little different than this latch over here to move it up and down a significant amount. And that's because there's the plunge mechanism. And just to show you here, you essentially push this down with your thumb, then you can plunge. And when you plunge to like a half depth and then you release it, it holds. So it's a really nice mechanism. And just to show you what's in here, so if I just pull down this cover, so it's really just a spring and then just like rod in there that moves. And yeah, very happy with it. So it's very good quality. The grips are generally quite good. And I know some of the higher end ones would have like a trigger on here, but then you have to deal with wiring into this. So I don't mind not having it wired. And also just to show you, so you can mount the, and I'll show a little bit of it in a few minutes, but the router edge guide is compatible, and actually most of the accessories. So whether you are working with template adapters or template guides, the edge guide, even third-party dust collection, it is compatible with both of these bases, which is awesome. Let's put the motor in here, and I'll talk about a few more features on this plunge base, which is the base I don't use that often, but I have used it to do some freehand routing on a few things, and it is handy for things like the drainage ring or rim around a cutting board, so you can do that easily with this. And it's very easy to set up stop blocks and guide along that. It does show the rotation of the bit, and it does have, so just to show you, it does have this really handy depth set, which allows you to, so from one to the other or one to the next, it's 1/8 of an inch drop. So when you're doing a deep cut, you can essentially set this there, and then you just turn it around, and then you can go 1/8 of an inch deeper, turn it again, go another 1/8. I'll generally do 1/4 inch at a time with my straight bits, but yeah, very nice. And you do have fine adjust on this as well. So this plastic piece does move pretty freely, but it's grippy enough that you can use this to set kind of your custom depth. Then what you can do is you can fine adjust this down here. So you can basically lock this into place, and then you can fine adjust. I think it says on here, so one turn is 1/32 of an inch. So you can really dial this in for the plunge. I don't use the measurement piece of this. I do use this quite often, but I generally will just kind of wedge my workpiece in here and then eyeball it, because I'm just going for a relatively arbitrary depth, and then I cut the rest of the piece accordingly. So I don't use this this guide over here or this fine adjust, but I do use this block quite often. I'm trying to think of what else to talk about with this this plunge base. So the motion is really quite nice, and the way that you push this down with your thumb, it's just very natural and just very handy to be able to lock it at any spot, and it stays. So very happy with this. I did kind of have the original idea of like, oh, well, I won't use the fixed base, I'll use the plunge base for everything. It does get a little cumbersome just with how large this is, but the combination of the plunge base and the fixed base with this router is fantastic. So 80% of the time I do use the fixed base. The other 20% of the time I use the plunge, really only whenever I need the plunge. But the base plate on this does accept, again, the wide variety of accessories, and it does have this really nice flat edge over here. So if you're running up against, and this unfortunately doesn't mount to the DeWalt tracks that I have for my track saw, but if you want to run up alongside something, you can easily do that with this. And you can with this as well, and because this is a perfect circle, and if you use a centering cone to get the bit perfectly centered, you can use basically any part along the outside of this to run along the edge of something. But I do find that the straight edge on the fixed base is something that I do use from time to time. So anyways, that's a bit of an overview of this. And one thing I would like to highlight right now is relatively, well, very poor out of the box dust collection. And Bosch does sell an accessory that one for the fixed base, one for the plunge base, that does then allow you to hook up your dust collection to it. And the reviews are generally that it's quite good and does a good job collecting dust, but very expensive to get the two. And yeah, it's something that I really do wish they included with this kit. I think it's something that people are taking a lot more seriously. And for that reason, I have an accessory that I'll highlight in just a moment. So that's kind of the tour of the router here, the things that I like, the things that I don't. Overall, very happy with it, but let's take a look at a few of the accessories that I have with this. All right, so here we have a few of these smaller accessories that I use all the time with my Bosch 1617 EVSPK, and I have done detailed videos on each of these, so when I'm talking about them, I'll link to those videos above. So first of all, we have the RA1054 Deluxe Router Guide. So this is an edge guide primarily, so you can slide the router in. It does have the dust port, so very easy to connect your shop vac or dust extractor to that, and it is a very good edge guide. So gives you pretty good fine adjustment. It also does include a circuit cutting jig where you can essentially use these rods and a center point to pivot around a single point and cut circles, and it works okay. I would not recommend it if you're looking for highly detailed work. It doesn't give you fine adjustment capabilities. And yeah, so I'd say as far as using this as a router edge guide, this is pretty good and probably among the best of kind of the mainstream brands. Porter Cables is really nice though as well. But if you are looking to cut circles, while this does have that capability, definitely do it a few times before on a couple practice pieces before committing to your final work piece. So I am generally pretty happy with the router edge guide, and instead of moving to something like the M-Power or a few of those other aftermarket ones that are a bit more premium, this is pretty affordable and the dust collection is pretty good. And again, very happy with this overall. And I do have a detailed review video on that router guide. So again, I'll have linked that above and in the description. So next up on the official accessory side, we have our template guides. So we do have a few different ways for this to work. And so it comes with this. Let me take this out. It can be a little annoying to work with. There we go. But so we have these template guides, and this adapter goes into the router. So it's very easy to basically just take those screws out. This just mounts in there. You do want to make sure that you center your base plate to the chuck and to the spindle before doing that. And to do so, you use the centering cone, which doesn't come with the router. I think the DeWalt router comes with a centering cone, or used to come with a centering cone, but this is pretty cheap. I think it was less than $10, but the centering cone basically goes into the collet and then allows you to perfectly center, just through the nature of circles, to perfectly center the base plate down here, because there is a little bit of wobble when you undo these screws on purpose so that you can get it perfectly centered. Then when you get that perfectly centered, you mount this adapter very easily with 2 screws just in the bottom there, and then you can install your template guides. And if you are like me, You may not need any of these Bosch template guides, but what you do need is this adapter. And this adapter makes it compatible with the Porter cable style guide bushings, which is not necessarily an industry standard, but pretty close to industry standard. Porter cable, well, obviously Porter cable uses it with a lot of their systems, but a lot of other brands have adopted their style. So this can just easily go in there, and then you're all set with Porter cable style guide bushings. So again, for this accessory, I do have a dedicated video that talks about this, goes through the mechanism of mounting it into your router, using the centering cone, and a few other things. So again, in the description below. And finally, we have the universal dust-free router hood. So this is from Oneida Air Systems. And again, I do have a dedicated video on this, but it's essentially this universal base plate. This does replace the plastic base plate that's on the router already, and has a really, really good quality dust collection. The quality of the plastic was a little concerning at first. It's very feels fragile, but I have used this a few dozen times and it's held up really, really well. So I would highly recommend this. The reason why I bought this over the official Bosch one is because this is compatible with both of these bases, so both the fixed base and the plunge base, as well as fully compatible with my 12 volt DeWalt cordless router. So being able to use this base plate essentially across 3 different bases saved me a lot of money, and the dust collection quality that comes from it is surprisingly good. So if you're in the market for aftermarket dust collection, regardless of what brand of router you have, I'd highly recommend checking this out. And just like the others, I do have a dedicated video on how this works with the Bosch, as well as a video on how this works with the DeWalt cordless router. So thanks for watching my review on the Bosch 1617EVSPK. For me, I love this router. I think for the price, it is very good value. Yeah, it might not be quite what you get with a Festool, but it's also not $1,000. So very, very happy with this router. I'd highly recommend it. There are lots of accessories that it's both compatible with from Bosch, as well as a lot of aftermarket. So it is very much industry standard. This is also a very proven router. I think the EVS and EVSPK have been out since the mid 2000s with no significant changes throughout those years. So it's very, very much proven. It's very powerful. It's a great router with a great system and really good value. I did not show a couple of the other accessories that I do use. So I do use my Bosch router table, which I have mounted in the table saw, and I have a separate video on that. And I also have a lot of videos on how to use the Porter cable dovetail jig. So the 16s, oh, I can't remember the model number. 4216 Super Jig, I think is the one. But I have a lot of videos on how to use that, and I do use this Bosch 1617 EVSPK in that with the fixed base. So anyways, thanks for watching. If you're in the market for a router, definitely consider this. If you are looking for that 2.25 horsepower, if you are looking for something smaller, definitely check out that DeWalt 20 volt. It is an awesome system, very quiet, quick to stop. Definitely a good entry router for those looking to use 1/4 inch bits. So thanks for watching, and see you in another video soon.